This is the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me. I want to share my story with the world, now that I have closure. It all started a couple years ago when I was living with my girlfriend, who we'll call Sarah for the sake of the story. I remember we were both in the living room watching a movie. We usually did movie nights on Fridays, and it was my turn to select which movie we get to watch. I was personally a horror fanatic, so I chose a horror film. It was pretty late in the night when this occurred, so it really made the movie that much more intense. Sarah wasn't really into the horror genre, so you can imagine the kind of reaction she had throughout the movie. Midway into the movie, Sarah asked if I could walk her to the bedroom. I reply by saying, sure, after the movie's done.
You know I don't like horror. Please just walk me to the bedroom. I'm scared, Trevor.
We can leave when the movie's done. I sat through your whole movie last week, so it's only fair that you finish mine.
Please don't do this to me. I'm really scared, Trevor.
Quit being a chicken. I'm not leaving the couch till this movie's done.
I hate you!
Sarah angrily gets up and heads to the bedroom on her own while I continue watching the movie and mentally prepare myself for the argument that awaited me. About 10 minutes later, my throat begins to itch, so I decide to get a bottle of water in the kitchen. As I stood up from the couch, I get startled as I see Sarah standing in the darkness of the hallway. Sarah, you scared me. I thought you were in bed sleeping. Sarah just stands there with her eyes wide open, gazing into my eyes with her emotionless expression, almost like she was looking into the depths of my soul. I assume she was still upset about earlier, so I said, I'll be waiting in bed as I casually walk past her. As I open the bedroom door, I see Sarah laying in bed asleep. My mind raced with mixed emotions of confusion and absolute horror. I could have sworn I just saw her. I decide to peek outside the hallway, only to see nothing. This can't be real. I could have sworn I just saw her. I must be hallucinating. I just need to stop watching scary movies this late at night. I disregard what had just occurred and crawled into bed with Sarah. At 3 a.m. in the morning, I wake up to a loud sound which sounded like glass being shattered. I noticed Sarah was no longer in bed with me, which I found quite bizarre as it was very uncharacteristic for her to be awake at this time of night. I could hear weird noises coming from the washroom outside the bedroom. I cautiously get up and began to approach the washroom. I could hear Sarah in there. It sounded like she was talking to someone, or something. I opened the door, only to discover the most terrifying thing I had ever laid eyes on. I can see Sarah standing in the bathtub covered in blood. She had smashed the mirror and used the broken shards to lacerate her body entirely. She then began yelling the words, I hate you! I hate you! I hate you! Her voice was demonic. I was thoroughly convinced that this was not my girlfriend and that she had been possessed by some sort of evil entity. I stood there quivering, not being able to move a muscle out of shell shock. Sarah then pulls the shower curtain, unveiling a message on the wall which spelled, I hate you, written in blood. My legs go completely numb as I collapse to the floor. Sarah then picks up a large piece of the broken mirror and yells one last time in her demonic voice, I hate you! She then pierces the shard across my chest repeatedly, stabbing and stabbing and stabbing. I remember seeing a bright white light as my life flashed before me. That's when I open my eyes and wake up to a movie playing in the living room. This isn't the horror movie I played earlier. It must have been a movie Sarah put on. I checked the time and it was exactly 3 a.m. I looked to my right only to see Sarah staring dead at me with a grimacing look. What's wrong, Sarah?
This is the third time you fell asleep to the movie that I picked on movie night. I hate you.
Sarah? Sarah? This story happened to me on a Saturday night. It happened when I was with my girlfriend, who we'll call Lisa for the sake of the story. I was sitting on my bed watching TV while Lisa was on her laptop working on a school report for her English class. It was due the following Monday, which kept her busy on the laptop for the majority of the weekend. My parents were out of town, so we had the house to ourselves. I'd just like to point out that Lisa and I were polar opposites from each other. I say this because she was a goth who fantasized over dark and morbid kind of things. I was the complete opposite from that. However, our different personalities didn't stop us from pursuing a relationship with one another, as we'd been together for about 4 months now. I'd also like to point out that Lisa was extremely socially awkward if she was talking to anyone other than myself. There was a time where I invited her over to a family dinner with my parents. Lisa was understandably a bit shy at first, but as the night progressed, it turned out to be less awkward than I anticipated. Near the end of dinner, my dad asked Lisa, "So Lisa, if you could have anything in the world other than Jack, what would it be?"
I don't know if I feel comfortable answering that.
What do you mean? What else would you want other than my son?
Harold, stop it! Sweetie, you can tell us only if you want.
I could tell Lisa was getting uncomfortable about the impromptu interrogation my parents decided to have by the look on her face.
Well, it's complicated.
To be honest, I was a little taken back by that statement, as I thought I knew everything about her. I decided to chime in saying, what do you mean, Lisa? Things took a total 180 when Lisa says,
Don't you guys wish you could resurrect your dead loved ones?
Sure, I guess I would. My family found Lisa quite bizarre since that day, but oddly enough, accepted her for who she was. Fast forward to now, and that statement that Lisa made would all make sense to me. Lisa was tired of the monotony of her report, so we decided to head to the balcony. I remember both of us being out of our minds while gazing out into the horizon. Midway through, Lisa offhandedly makes an odd remark saying,
It would be pretty cool if I could see Todd again.
Todd was Lisa's ex. I found this quite strange that she would say such a thing, considering the fact that we were both dating each other. I assumed she was out of her mind, but sadly that didn't stop me from giving her a piece of my mind. I agitatedly said, "Fine, go see him then. It's not like I ever liked you." Lisa then gives me a death stare like she wanted to throw me off the balcony. I stare back at her while I casually take another. A long pause of awkward silence occurred, but then I had a nostalgic moment. I remembered Lisa mentioning something about Todd passing away just before we dated. His cause of death was due to undisclosed reasons I won't get into. Everything Lisa was saying all made sense now. She was just expressing that she wanted to see Todd again since he was no longer here with us. I attributed my lack of memory to being in my mind, which helped make the mishap more plausible, so I extend my arm to pass the to Lisa. She then slaps the out of my hand and aggressively says,
He was better than you anyway.
I had gotten into arguments with Lisa in the past, but I could tell she was at her boiling point this time. She then storms out of my place and immediately gets into her car. Despite being wrong in the situation, I stupidly shouted from the balcony saying, "Fine, have fun fishing on Tinder, loser!" She then flips me the bird and begins driving off into the distance. I eventually head back to my bedroom and continue to watch TV. About 5 minutes later, I couldn't help but feel guilty about what I did. I then decide to text Lisa saying, "Please come back to my house. I'm not trying to fight. I also have a free place in more in case you forgot." A couple minutes go by and I get no reply. That's when I start becoming more anxious. I kept contemplating whether I should call Lisa, but I didn't want to submit to the fact that I was begging for her forgiveness. I continued watching television. That's when I noticed Lisa's laptop sitting on my computer desk. She had stormed off and obviously forgot to take it with her. I noticed that Lisa had left her school report still open on a Word document, so I decided to proofread it, thinking it would be my silly way of apologizing to her. The report was titled, "Be with your loved ones, even when they're dead." This wasn't that surprising, as I knew the kind of person Lisa was, but it was also disturbing due to the circumstances that had just occurred on the balcony. I skimmed through the report and find Lisa talking about a relationship and how she wasn't internally happy and needed some sort of closure. I became more and more anxious the further I read into the report. She goes into detail about her past relationship with Todd and how she misses him tremendously. As I skim through more of the report, I come across a part where Lisa talks about being able to reconnect with Todd through a satanic blog she found online. To summarize what she said, it basically insinuated that you would have to go to the last spot where the person died and die the same way. That way you'll be able to reconnect with them in the afterlife. I begin panicking and call Lisa's cell phone. She then picks up the phone and says,
"What do you want?"
in a voice full of disdain and hatred. I try to pretend like I knew nothing about the report and say, "Please come back. I'm sorry about everything that happened. I'm sorry about what I said."
"There's no coming back from this, Jack."
That's when I hear the sound of a train honking from a distance. My heart dropped and I yelled, "Lisa, where the hell are you?"
"Where I should have been all along."
I could hear the train getting louder and louder, like it was coming with a full head of steam towards her direction. I began shouting, "Lisa, get the hell out of there! Lisa, please, I'm sorry!" Desperately trying to stop her from what I knew she was about to do. "Lisa, I'm sorry, okay? Get the hell out of there! Please!" "Oh, Lisa, please, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Lisa, please, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please come back. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I was such an awful boyfriend. I'm sorry, Lisa." She then said,
"See you again, Todd."
"No! No, Lisa! Oh, Lisa, please, I'm sorry." This story happened to me a couple years ago. It happened on a Saturday night. I was typing out a school report for my English class and was pretty worn out from the tedious amount of thinking that transpired throughout the paper. I decided to take a break and procrastinate a little bit, maybe watch a couple of YouTube videos. I needed to take some stress off my mind, but didn't really have anyone to vent or talk to. This gave me the idea to visit a chat room called Omegle. For those of you who don't know what Omegle is, it's a chat room where you can literally video chat with random strangers online through your computer webcam. Needless to say, Omegle definitely helped with my social skills growing up as a child, so I was always active on it. I remember this one particular night. I was having trouble meeting new people. This left me a little frustrated to say the least, but that's the kind of thing to expect when you're on these kind of chat sites. That's when I stumbled upon this one guy. He looked to be around the same age group as myself and seemed like a pretty harmless individual. I decided to say hi. He didn't say anything back, he just typed the word hi in the chat box. I found it kind of weird that he would go through the effort of typing out hi as opposed to just saying hi verbally. He then waved at me and began typing something else. He introduced himself in the chat box saying, "My name is Daniel, what's your name?" I verbally said, "My name is James, how are you?" He then stares at the camera and doesn't say a word to me, completely dismissing the fact that I just asked him a question. At this point, I was convinced that this had to be some sort of pre-recorded video and that someone was just trolling me. That's when he began typing in the chat box again saying, "I'm deaf, please type in the chat box unless you know sign language." I honestly felt stupid and immediately typed, "No worries, my name is James," and gave a quick thumbs up as an act of kind gesture. He immediately typed back saying, "Nice to meet you, James," and gave me a thumbs up as well. He then typed something else that left me dumbfounded. He said, "I will use my whiteboard to chat with you going forward, because my hands will be occupied." I was confused by what he meant by that, so I typed, "What do you mean by your hands being occupied?" He then starts writing on a whiteboard and raises it up on the screen, which read, "Want to play a game?" I typed, "Sure, what game you want to play?" What he did next is something I will never forget to this day. He held a revolver up with one hand and the whiteboard up with the other hand, saying, "Let's play Russian roulette." I was honestly quite creeped out by this guy and was contemplating on clicking the stop option to skip this weirdo. That's when he wrote another message on the whiteboard saying, "1 of 6. I was confused by what 1 of 6 meant. He then took the revolver, slipped one bullet inside the cylinder, and began spinning it with his other hand. I now knew what he meant by 1 of 6. It seemed like the guy was about to demonstrate an act of Russian roulette with one bullet in the cylinder of 6. He then puts the revolver against his head. I began typing, "What are you doing? Please stop this." The guy then smiles disturbingly on the camera and pulls the trigger. Nothing happened. He starts laughing hysterically like a psycho. I was honestly disturbed, but also skeptical that the gun was real, so I typed, "Is that even real?" He then points the revolver at the wall and begins to repeatedly press the trigger until the shot was fired. I was completely blown away by what I was seeing and typed, "Dude, you could have died!" That's when the guy raised the whiteboard to the screen again, showing the message, 5 of 6. I frantically started typing, "Don't do it," repeatedly in the chat box, desperately trying to get his attention. He then began loading the revolver with 5 bullets while I gestured no by waving my hands back and forth like a lunatic. I knew the odds of him surviving this time were slim to none. He then raises the revolver against his head once again and begins to disturbingly smile, with tears running down his face. He began mumbling the words, "It was nice meeting you, James." I immediately slammed my laptop shut as I hear a gunshot a split second before the laptop was fully closed. I was left baffled on my computer desk. I hadn't a clue what to do. I stupidly opened my laptop up with my eyes closed. I pressed my hand against the screen where the video chat was located. I opened my eyes, and through the cracks of my fingers, I can see blood displayed everywhere on his screen. I immediately clicked the exit button on the Google Chrome tab and call it a night. To this day, I'm still skeptical about what I saw that night. I haven't reported anything to the police, nor have I reported anything to Omegle. I'm not sure if that was the wisest decision, but I hope I never encounter anyone like that again. I was 4 years old when this story took place. We lived in a very mundane apartment complex that only had 3 floors, but that didn't bother me as I stayed home most of the time. One afternoon, I was home alone with my maid, who was cooking lunch for me. After lunch, she told me that she had to go work at someone's house that evening and that she didn't know when she'd be back. I remember feeling extremely sad, and that must have been evident on my face because she responded to my looks by saying, "You can come with me if you like. It's just a few doors down, so it's not much of a walk." My eyes lit up when she said this. The following evening, we arrived at the house. I could hear the television from where I was. My maid knocked on the door, but no one answered. When she knocked again, a young woman opened the door. She was sort of a partner for my maid who would work with her majority of the time. We stepped inside and immediately my eyes alighted to a very porky-looking woman with disheveled hair lying down on the couch holding a television remote. To my left, 2 young boys sat in front of each other busying themselves with toy blocks. My maid asked me to play with them, so I obliged. I sat down beside them as my maid and her friend strode out of the living room and into the kitchen. This is where the story starts to take a turn. 10 minutes after I sat down, I heard the woman suddenly gasp for air whilst clutching her chest. My heart sank and the blocks dropped from my hand. My maid and her friend rushed in and saw the woman's face turning blue. She kept croaking the words, "Big man, big man." Just then, a dark shadow materialized beside her. He was so tall that he stretched up to the ceiling. I was so scared I couldn't even think straight. The 2 boys next to me looked just as shocked as I was. Then, the woman fell silent and her eyes clamped shut. It was silent for almost a full minute before her eyes shot open again, and I swear, I thought her pupils had turned just a shade darker. I wish I wasn't there for what happened next. The woman began laughing like a maniac. Her wide eyes darted in their sockets from one end of the room to the next. She kept puffing up her chest and writhing around like a terrified worm. My maid stumbled back, hit the edge of the couch, and fell to the floor, throwing her hands behind to catch her balance. Meanwhile, her friend sprinted towards the balcony behind us, slid the sliding glass door open, and proceeded to throw herself out of it in fear. This triggered my instincts, so I jumped up, and so did the two boys beside me. We tried our best to stop her from falling over. My maid rushed in, and together we hurled her backwards. My maid then grabbed her friend by the shirt, pulled her close, and said, "If we are going to get through this, we are going to together!" We re-entered the living room, and by this point, the woman was on her knees with her arms above her head. She began waving them madly. My maid opened the door and left, leaving her petrified friend behind with us. The woman began taunting her eyes open wider than ever. Moments later, my maid arrived with two people, an older man and a younger woman. The woman took one look at the man, and her whole face fell as she threw him the blankest stare. Then she began to growl as he approached her and shook her head violently as if to say no. The man took the remote and turned on the TV. He played around with the channels until he found one where a priest was reading a Bible verse. The woman fell to the floor and thrashed around wildly. The man bravely walked up to her and placed a hand over her forehead, then began threatening the spirit so that it would leave. After what felt like forever, the woman fell silent again. The man then turned to my maid and her friend, who were now shaking uncontrollably, and said, "I have to spend the night here. I can't leave this woman alone with her kids. You have to leave now." The two women didn't say anything, but merely shook their heads. My maid then did something which I felt to be extremely stupid. She volunteered to spend the night with him, and her friend reluctantly agreed, looking at her as if she had gone mad. This meant that I had to spend the night too, since I didn't like sleeping alone. The night whizzed by uneventfully, and the next morning when I awoke, the house felt quiet. Just then, my maid walked into the living room with that same friend of hers and stood a few inches away from the couch. They began silently arguing with each other over something I couldn't quite comprehend, but when the argument was over, my maid was the first one to step up. She tapped the woman on the shoulder and the woman opened her eyes again. Something about her eyes told me that she had returned to her normal self, but I wasn't all convinced of this theory. The woman sat up and looked at my maid in the eye. My maid then proceeded to ask her, "Ma'am, would you like some coffee?" The woman took a few seconds to respond, but when she did, it wasn't her voice that we all heard, but a deep, gruff voice like that of a man. It echoed off the walls of the house as she said, "No." A few years later, when my maid recalled that incident to me, she then told me something that chilled me to the bone. She told me that a few months before that happened, her husband had assaulted and killed their 13-year-old daughter right before drowning himself in the bathtub. To this day, I will never understand why she didn't just move out of that house. I'm 15 years old now, and that experience still haunts me to this day. This is a true story from when I was 18 years old. It still creeps me out just thinking about it. It all started when I was heading home from my friend Jason's house. It was about 3 a.m. in the morning, so it was pretty dark outside. I was walking towards a bus stop to catch the blue night bus that ran during after hours. My friend didn't really reside within a suburban area. He was more or less closer to the downtown region. That meant there were a lot of random weirdos strolling around the streets, which definitely made me a little uncomfortable to say the least. "They're uncomfortable, I have to sleep out here." I decided to wait inside the glass shelter of a nearby bus stop as I regretted my decision to take the bus this late at night as opposed to just calling an Uber. I couldn't help but notice the dozens of flyers stuck up on the glass of the shelter. They were scattered everywhere, all varying from different things like job postings, rooms for rent, that kind of thing. There was this one flyer that really caught my attention. It was a picture of an older gentleman doing a peace gesture with his left hand. The title of the posting was called, "Easy $300 in One Day, Call Me." I decided to read further into the flyer as the thought of making an easy $300 in one day seemed like a bargain one couldn't refuse. The flyer had a description which read, "If you are looking to make a quick $300, then you've come to the right place. This job entails the assistance of cleaning/chores for a period of 12 hours. Call my cell phone and the details provided below if you're interested. Regards, Philippe." I was a part-time college student, so any extra money would have definitely been beneficial to me. I decided to take a plunge at the opportunity, so I took a picture of the flyer as I see a night bus arriving towards my stop. As I boarded the bus, I refrained from calling the job posting as I didn't want to wake the employer up, so I ultimately decided to text the number instead. My text read, "Hello, please contact this number as I am interested in the job presented in your flyer." About 10 seconds later after sending the text, I get a call from an unknown number. I assume it was the guy in the job posting, so I answer it. "Hello?" A man answered back, "Hey, you interested in the job? Is this Philippe from the $300 a day posting?" Yes it is. What's your name, kid?" I'm John, sir. How are you?" He completely disregards my question and says, "You mind coming over right now, kid?" Sir, it's kinda late for that. Can we do tomorrow?" "Kid, listen. I know it's very late at night, but both my wife and grandma are sick, so I could use a helping hand as soon as possible." I felt really uncomfortable knowing this guy was trying to guilt trip me into coming over to his house. Mind you, it was approximately 3 a.m. in the morning, which made the thought of going that much more absurd. I tell him, "Sir, if we can arrange this for tomorrow, it would be much more convenient for me." "Kid, John, listen. If you come right now, I will pay you double. $600. Take it or leave it." Whether the man was bribing me or not, I unwisely took the bait. I ended up saying, "I'm on my way. I'll be there in about a half an hour," while simultaneously getting off the bus to call an Uber. I ended up getting dropped off at the address provided within the flyer and immediately began second-guessing my decision. While standing in front of the house, I get a call on my cell phone. It was from an unknown number again. I answer it and say, "Hello?" "Hey, Johnny, can you see me?" No, sir. Where are you?" "Look at the window." "I'm looking at it, but I don't see you, sir." "Look a bit closer. I'm looking dead at you." Where, sir?" I get startled by a firm grasp on my shoulder. "Oh, I'm sorry, John. I didn't mean to scare you. I thought you could see my reflection in the window. Anyways, please allow me to show you inside my house." Thank you, Philippe." "You can call me Creep." "Creep? Why would I call you Creep?" "It's a nickname that my mom gave me as a young boy. All my close friends call me that, so I'd appreciate it if you did the same." Okay, Philippe. Creep." We are technically friends now, right?" Yeah, sure." "Very well then. Let me show you inside, John." We end up going inside, and I can't help but notice the amount of dolls laying around his house. It honestly looked like he was a hoarder that had an obsession over dolls. I decided to ask him, "Why do you have so many dolls?" "It's just a collection that I've accumulated from my childhood. Aren't they precious, John? I've built a special bond with these guys. I'll never feel alone again, you know?" At this point, I was pretty convinced that the name Creep was actually his biological name due to the creepy vibes he was giving off. "I see. Well, what exactly does this job entail?" "Well, for starters, my grandma and wife are unfortunately ill, so I have to take care of them since they're in bed all the time." "If you don't mind me asking, what's wrong with them?" "Well, my grandma has Parkinson's, so she's unable to function without my assistance. My wife sadly got into a tragic car accident after her dance rehearsal. She's pretty much paralyzed in her legs and can't walk, so I now have to take care of her as well." "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." "She was so beautiful before the accident. I'm unbelievably lucky to be with such a beauty like her. We got married and had about 100 people there. It was the best wedding ever. Sorry if I'm getting carried away." "No worries. What would you like me to do for now?" "You can start by vacuuming the house. Just don't go inside the bedrooms, because that's going to disturb my grandma and wife's sleep." A couple minutes later, I begin vacuuming the hallway upstairs. The bedroom doors were slightly open, so I could vaguely view the inside of it. I remember seeing a glimpse of a woman sleeping on a bed which I assumed to be his wife. It was unfortunate to see her like that, as she was quite beautiful from what I was able to see. I noticed the man was in the other bedroom having a conversation with his grandma, so I continued vacuuming without drawing too much attention towards his direction. Have you been feeling better? Are you okay? The next part of the story is what sends chills down my spine. The man asked me to put the vacuum down and meet his grandma. As I approach the inside of the bedroom, I see a creepy life-size doll laying on the bed. I unhesitatingly ask him, where's your grandma? John, don't be rude. This is my grandma. I felt my heart fall to my stomach when he said that. I honestly wanted to get the hell out of there, but I didn't want to potentially put my life in danger, so I just went along with it and said, Nice to meet you. He then said, my grandma thinks you're really handsome and you should come over more often. Sure, I'll definitely come over more often. My grandma wants me to grab her some McDonald's. Why don't you continue vacuuming the place while I do that? Sure, sir. Creep. The man then hands me an envelope and says, Here's your $600. Thanks for being there for us. Yeah, no problem. I then continue vacuuming the hallway as the man exits the house. I need to get the hell out of here. This guy is a psycho. As I dropped the vacuum on the floor, I peeked inside the bedroom of where the man's wife was sleeping. To be honest, I felt really skeptical about leaving her there, so I shouted, Ma'am, is everything okay? Can you hear me? Ma'am, are you okay? Can you hear me? She didn't say anything. She honestly looked like she was heavily sedated off the meds I saw on top of the nightstand. I end up leaving the house and catching an Uber. I eventually make it home and remember the man had gave me the $600 in an envelope. Thank God I made it out of there. At least I made an easy $600. I opened the envelope only to see 6 pieces of paper. Each piece had a poorly drawn face with $100 written on it. I shouted in anger, What the hell is this? I contemplated on giving the man a piece of my mind, but I honestly didn't want any further conflict with this psycho. Just before heading to bed that night, I got a call from an unknown number. It was quite obvious that it was the creep, so I ignored it and never looked back. It's been a couple months since that creepy experience. I haven't gotten any more calls from that unknown number since. I was strolling around with my phone one day when I got a notification that someone followed me on Instagram. I noticed it was the creep from the avatar picture on his profile. I was pretty freaked out that he was able to track me down since he only knew my first name and we haven't contacted each other since. I noticed he had only one post, so I clicked it. It was a picture of the woman and the creep on the same bed. She looked sedated while wearing a wedding veil. The creep had his arm around her while there were hundreds of dolls surrounding the two. The caption read, "The best wedding an audience ever." She was so beautiful before the accident. I'm unbelievably lucky to be with such a beauty like her. We got married and had about 100 people there. It was the best wedding ever. I hate Christmas. I hate it with the most malice intentions ever. As a matter of fact, the thought of Christmas makes my skin crawl. I wasn't like this before. I used to cherish the holiday tradition, but all of that's changed now. It all started a couple years back when I was 26 years old. It was the holidays, so Christmas was around the corner while festivities were in full effect. Hey, I'm on my way to pick you up.
I'm excited to go Christmas shopping!
Yeah, me too. Me and my girlfriend Emma had dated since high school, so the bond that we shared was something most couples couldn't fathom, to say the least. I decided to propose to Emma on Christmas. Figured I couldn't go wrong on such a monumental occasion. I remember it being a snowy evening when me and Emma went to the mall to do some holiday Christmas shopping. The mall was bombarded with more shoppers than usual as there was a holiday sale going on in almost every store. I remember being in need of a festive outfit for my parents' upcoming Christmas party as my wardrobe lacked the attire. I decided to check out the clothing store Forever 21 as I could see they had a wide variety of selection from first glance. I picked out an array of various Christmas sweaters and headed to the fitting room while my girlfriend waited outside for me. Oh yeah, fits way better than my dad's lame hand-me-downs. Hey babe, how does this look? I noticed my girlfriend Emma wasn't there. I figured she must have gone back into the store to look at more clothes. As I left the changing room, I noticed from the corner of my eye that Emma was outside the store waiting in a huge line for something. I ended up purchasing one of the sweaters and began to approach Emma. Hey babe, why'd you leave me hanging in the fitting room?
I wanted to line up and take a picture with him.
Emma, this line is huge. I'll just dress up as Santa later and you can take a picture of me.
He's not Santa, though.
I looked towards the direction of where the lineup began and realized that there were two separate lineups. One lineup was for a professionally taken photo with the mall Santa. The other lineup was for a picture with a man dressed as the Grinch. We were unfortunately in the lineup for the Grinch as Emma was a pretty big fan of the character. I personally found the whole ordeal bizarre considering he didn't have any professional setup like how the mall Santa had. No platform, no chair, no professional photographer, no elf services, just him and the bench he sat on. I assumed he was one of those street performers that just dressed up for donations, except there was no tip jar or anything that would allow guests to donate in. Emma, this guy looks kinda sus. Can we just leave?
Please just relax, Henry. It'll only take a couple of minutes.
I decided to bite my tongue and proceed with Emma's request as there was nothing I could have said that could convince her otherwise. As we got closer to the front of the lineup, I could visibly see the Grinch's eyes light up with exhilaration, almost like I brought a sense of enthusiasm into his day. I decided to be ballsy and lock eyes with him, just to express more of my alpha male side towards this weirdo. As the line gradually progressed, I realized that he wasn't making eye contact with me, he was looking at my girlfriend Emma. It was blatantly obvious he had an interest in my girlfriend due to the lack of attention he was giving others taking photos with him. What the hell is this guy's problem? Why is he checking out my girlfriend? We eventually reached the front of the line and approached the Grinch to take a three-way selfie with my cell phone.
Hey, buddy, the girl gets a picture first.
Dude, that's my girlfriend.
I said, get behind the girl, kid.
Stupid green prick.
Another beautiful hoe.
What did you just call me?
I mean, ho, 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 Merry Christmas. What's your name, little girl?
My name is Emma.
Ooh, what a beautiful name to match such a beautiful face. Why don't you come here and sit on Daddy's lap?
Dude, what the hell is your problem?
Back off, loser. She wants a picture with me, not you.
He's my boyfriend. Don't talk to him like that.
Sit on my lap and be a good girl, Emma, or else Santa won't give you any presents this year. I'm putting you on my naughty list, you little brat!
That's when we decided to head home. I remember dropping off my girlfriend at her place and then heading home to assist my parents in prepping for the Christmas party the following night. My parents were really old school and put a lot of effort into decorating their household, especially during festive holidays like this. Later that night, I remember making myself a glass of hot chocolate spiked with a little bit of my dad's whiskey. I sat by the fireplace and enjoyed the fire-crackling ambience while casually sipping on my drink. Figured I couldn't go wrong with that on a warm Christmas Eve. I remember hearing my cell phone ringing throughout the night. I recall being so intoxicated I couldn't see nor hear anything distinctively. Everything was blurry. It felt virtually impossible to move any fiber of my body, almost like I was stuck in a subconscious state of sleep paralysis. I began to close my eyes and doze off again. A couple hours later, I recall a voice whispering my name.
Hey, Henry. Henry, wake up. Hello, wake up, you little drunk. It's me, Santa.
I could vaguely see the outline of a man that looked like a Santa figure standing in front of me. Bear in mind, I was still in a groggy and incoherent state of mind, so making out the gentleman's minuscule facial features was almost an impossible endeavor to comprehend.
Hey, Henry, I brought you a Christmas present.
Dad, is that you?
Henry, listen, I want you to open up this Christmas gift first when you wake up. Do you understand me?
Yeah, Dad, sir.
I'm going to leave it right here in the middle of the Christmas tree, okay?
Okay.
Anyways, Merry Christmas, Henry.
Merry Christmas, Dad.
Shh, time to go to sleep again, Henry.
A couple hours later, I get awoken by the light from the living room window illuminating on my face. I realized I had blacked out due to the spiked concoction I had whipped up the previous night. I checked my cell phone and realized that I had about 10 missed calls and over 100 missed texts from Emma. I opened the text messages, only to see the text reading,
Hey, is that you? Are you inside my place? This isn't funny, Henry.
and so on and so forth. What I found more disturbing was the last batch of messages, which read,
I knew you were going to propose all along.
Merry Christmas, Henry.
It just kept repeating, over and over again. I began calling Emma's cell phone and only got her voicemail. That's when I closed my eyes and began recollecting the imagery of what transpired last night. I could vaguely recall someone dressed as Santa and leaving a present underneath the Christmas tree. That's when I noticed a box that looked out of place from the rest of the presents. I took the box and opened it, only to discover a severed hand. The hand had a message on it which read, "Marry me." This story happened a couple years ago when I was in my early teens. It all started when I went to the movies with my friend Sam to go see the world premiere of The Dark Knight. The movie garnered a lot of notoriety at the time, obviously due to Heath Ledger's leading role as the Joker. I personally thought it was the greatest movie I had ever seen, considering I've seen almost every Batman movie that ever existed. I decided to buy some Dark Knight merchandise at the vendor booth located in the theater. What appealed most was how cheap the Batman masks were selling for. I didn't have a Halloween costume picked out for October yet, and neither did my friend Sam. We both collectively purchased one mask each and figured it would make for an easy costume to trick-or-treat with. I can honestly say it was an astronomical improvement from the cliche bedsheet over the head ghost I was last year. Fast forward to October 31st. Me and Sam both wore our Batman masks and began going door to door, looking for an opportunity to fill our candy sacks faster than any other trick-or-treater on the block. Trick-or-treat! Well, happy Halloween, Batman. That's it? Lame.
Get the hell off my property, you ungrateful twerps!
The majority of the houses were pretty generous, with the exception of a few bad apples, to say the least. On this particular night, there wasn't many houses that had their lights on, which generally meant that they didn't really celebrate Halloween, or in other words, they weren't giving out candy. Me and Sam were understandably upset considering we'd been walking for at least an hour. I continued trick-or-treating while Sam began to head home through the pit located in the middle of the neighborhood.
Why didn't I just stay home and watch SpongeBob?
The pit was just a fancy nickname for the forest reserve, which was generally used for nature walks during the day. But me and Sam went there solely for the sake of a shortcut home. I began walking about half a block down when I see more houses without their lights on. Screw this, I'm going home. I eventually approached the pit while beating myself over the head for not leaving at the same time as Sam. As I entered the pit, I instantly had second thoughts of taking the longer route, as this route seemed nothing short of irresponsible and dangerous. I ultimately decided to man up and continue walking through the pit, as I didn't want to prolong my already dreadful night. Why the hell did I have to take this route? I can barely see anything. I knew I should have dressed up as a skateboarder. I would have been home already. I remember the pit being so dark to the point where I could virtually see nothing except for whatever my cell phone light was illuminating. What the hell was that? I began walking faster as I could hear faint sounds of what sounded like a maniac clown laughing. What the hell? Who's there? Who's there? At this point, I was so petrified I instinctively dropped my candy due to the adrenaline rush flowing through my body. I couldn't care less about the candy as I genuinely felt like my life was in danger. That's when I saw the source of the laughter standing a few feet in front of me. It was a man dressed as the Joker from the Batman movie I saw previously. He honestly looked like an exact replica of Heath Ledger's with a hint of blood on his costume. What made this more disturbing was how casual his demeanor was. He just stood there smiling at me like my appearance was amusing to him. I didn't want to express the fear I felt internally, so I tried to playfully marvel at his costume and say, "Hey there, I really like your Joker costume." No matter how hard I tried to keep a composed poker face, my body language and mannerisms couldn't help but show the fear that bled inside of me. He then took a couple steps closer to me as I began to cautiously take a few steps backwards. "Hey man, what the hell do you want from me?"
Why so serious? Happy Halloween.
The man surprisingly walks past me while I watch him in complete shock. What the hell was that? Was that some real-life Joker? At this point, I continued walking home while looking back every 2 seconds to make sure the man wasn't lurking behind me. I eventually make it home and watch a couple of YouTube videos, trying to forget the creepy encounter that just took place. That's when my dad pops into my room and asks me to answer the house phone. "Hey, Mark, answer the house phone." "Hello?"
Hey, Mark, is Sam still with you?
That's when I felt my heart drop to my stomach. No, he left to go home way before I did.
Oh my god, why would you leave without him? He's not even home!
Sam's parents end up calling the police, which resulted in an entire block search party. What came of such an innocent Halloween night turned into a nightmare. Sam's remains were eventually found in the pit, with his face lacerated into an exaggerated smile, and his head decapitated from his body. I haven't trick-or-treated since, and I still live with the regret of not leaving at the same time as my friend. I informed law enforcement about the bizarre encounter with the man I saw that night. Call it speculation or whatever you want, but I know the death of my friend Sam had something to do with that sick man. Or should I say, the Joker.
My god, why? Why would you take my son from me? Why, God? God, why? Why would you take my son from me? Police are looking for any witnesses to come forward in the connection of a deadly homicide of a teen. The victim's remains were found at the local park observatory. The suspect is described to be approximately 6 feet tall, Caucasian, and was last seen wearing purple attire with a green vest and tie. Police say the suspect is described to have face paint imitating the Joker from the blockbuster hit The Dark Knight. If anyone has any tips, please contact your local law enforcement and you shall remain anonymous. Alright, Karen, back to you.
Trick or treat! Well, happy Halloween, Batman. That's it? Lame.
Get the hell off my property, you ungrateful twerps!
When I was around 5, my mom, older brother, and I moved into a house of our own. Up until then, we were living with my sister, her husband, and my 2 nephews until my mom got back up on her feet. Even before moving into this new house, I was somewhat of a troubled child, for lack of a better word. I would wake up screaming most of every morning from horrible nightmares. I used to say I would see 2 little girls in the upstairs bedroom. There were no little girls in the house. It wasn't until years later after we moved that my sister had moved and found out that 2 little girls had passed away in the house a few years before moving in, but I'm getting off track here. We moved across town into some fairly decent duplex homes, would-be spacious 3-bedroom house. We were all excited to finally have our own home, and finally have our own room, no more sleeping on the couch. Our excitement fairly quickly diminished when we started experiencing things that we couldn't explain. My mom was fairly religious in the sense that we didn't attend church, but we would pray every night before bed and before each meal, and sometimes read Bible stories. That being said, about the month after moving in, my cousin who worked for the local church had gifted us some blessed palm crosses. My mother took them and hung one above the back door, which was connected to the kitchen, and one near our living room door, which was adjacent to the kitchen, residing by the stairs that led upstairs. A few days after hanging them, we started noticing every morning when we'd come down for breakfast, one would be on the floor. So after a few days, my mother decided to hang them from 2 nails and attach a piece of tape to the back in hopes that they would stop falling off, thinking that a breeze or something of such knocked them down. I have a hard time remembering in depth all the experiences we encountered, but I do remember hearing someone inside the wall talking to me. My mother was the first to really notice this because I would stop playing with my toys in the living room a few feet from the front of her and look up and say, "It's back," then continue playing. Over the next few months, more and more weird things started happening. Toys in my room would go off randomly. Toys that you would have to wind up or use a remote control to move. I had picture books with buttons that would talk attached to the book, and they would be in our hallway closet. At the most random times, they would go off like someone was pressing them. It was at this point that we were experiencing 3 occurrences, and my mom started to believe that there may be something paranormal going on. She went out and got some sage and attempted to clean the house while my brother and I were at school and he was at work. She recounts that she saged the entire house. Living room, kitchen hallways, bathroom, my brother's room, and her room. But as she was entering my room, she got an off-putting feeling. She nevertheless walked in and started to sage my room. As she's walking around my room, she hears someone whisper her name. Deborah. She describes it as a low whisper. She, of course, was on edge, but tried to logically explain it away and finish the saging. Not even 5 minutes after she heard the whisper, she heard another whisper. This time, it was more pronounced. Deborah. She says she froze, and as she did, her ponytail lifted up and dropped back down, slouching on her back. She then slowly walked out of my room, went down the stairs, got the car keys, ran out the front door, and drove to my school. She stayed there for 4 hours until the end of the school day. We went to my aunt's and didn't return home until we picked up my brother from work later that night. It seemed like after her attempt to clean the house with sage, the activity really started to pick up. My brother would often hear someone whispering their name, Deborah, Joseph, or would sometimes hear what sounded like someone or something telling them to say profanities. My mom didn't know where to go, who to see, or what to do. The people she told what was going on thought she was crazy, and the other house just didn't want to hear it. So all we could do was continue to pray and keep a positive attitude. Whatever was in that house seemed to target myself and my mother more than my brother. We don't know why. Eventually, I stopped sleeping in my room and started sleeping with my mom. I used to say there was a man that lived in my closet. I would take my family up to my closet and show them where the man was, of course, and they never saw anything. But I did. It was about a year of living there when my mother and I started seeing things. She would wake up one night and see the silhouette of a man on the ceiling over the bed, but she wouldn't be able to move or make a sound. Then she'd drift back into sleep like nothing happened. A few nights later, I would wait, the same experience. We would often see what appeared to be red glowing eyes looking through windows. I would even feel at night like someone had carried me out of the bed and had somehow got me outside. I couldn't wake up, but I could feel the cold wind and hear it and various other sounds from outside. We would often see what appeared to be shadows peeking around corners and ducking back when we'd look in their direction. But there was one encounter by far that shocked us both to the core. One night we're in bed and my brother was working graveyard. I was passed out and my mom, being a mom, couldn't sleep until she knew my brother was home safe. She sat at the foot of the bed, which was about 2 feet away from her small stand that held our old thick Dell computer. She was playing one of the old programmed games when she says she thought she heard something down the hall. She crowned her neck to the side to peek down the hall and didn't see anything. Not thinking anything of it, she continued to play the game. That's when she heard the sound again. This time it was louder. She says when she crowned her neck around the corner this time, she saw some kind of bony, flesh-colored creature walking from around the corner, as if coming from either the bathroom, my brother's room, or the stairs that were in the middle of the hallway and entering my bedroom. The best way she could describe it was, it sort of resembled the alien from the movie Aliens, the long pointed head but smaller, fleshier-like. She says she let out a gasp and the creature just froze in place. It stopped like it heard the gasp and slowly turned its head and stared at her with no distinct facial features whatsoever that she could see. She sat there frozen in fear, knowing that it was aware of her presence. She started to pray, at which point it turned and slowly walked into my bedroom. Again, she didn't know what to do in the situation. Does she wake me up and walk us down the hallway, crossing past my bedroom door to get to the stairs to leave the house? Does she call the cops? Do we climb out the bedroom window and jump from the second story to the ground? What does she do? She sat there for a good 5 minutes and somehow got the courage to go see what the creature was and what it was doing. Ready for a battle, she stood up, walked down the hallway, flicked on the hallway light, walked into my bedroom, flicked on the light, and to her astonishment, there was nothing there. She checked everywhere, under the bed, in the closet, made sure the window was locked, but there was nothing there. She then returned to the bedroom and sat there all night waiting for my brother to come home. The next day was fine. There was no kind of experiences whatsoever. Not to say that these occurrences happened on a daily basis. When it came time for bed, she put me in and said she had to go see my brother. I lay there on my side, facing away from the door. What I didn't know is that she was going to tell him about what had happened the night before. A few minutes passed and I feel her sit on the bed next to me, so I roll over to say goodnight and all the good stuff, but when I rolled over, it wasn't her sitting there. What I saw, and I swear to God may he strike me dead right now if I'm lying. What I saw was a darkish colored creature with flesh clinging to it, with its long head looming over me. I screamed. I didn't know what else to do. I screamed so loud that I'm certain I woke the neighbors on the other side of us. As I sat up to push myself off the bed to run out the room, the creature, in one quick motion, darted either under the bed or into the corner somewhere as I ran out the room down the hall. I see my mom and brother, pale as a ghost, shaking on the verge of passing out, trying to explain what I just saw and that we need to leave. Mind you, up until this point, what my mother and I experienced, we never shared. I was 5 or 6 at the time. I didn't know what she had seen and vice versa, but it was that experience that was the last straw in a sense. We ended up sleeping on the couch that night. The next morning, I drew them to the best of my ability what I saw, and it confirmed what my mother had seen the previous night. We didn't live there for too much longer, but until that day, we experienced unexplainable phenomenons. On the day we were moving, both crosses that I mentioned earlier were thrown off the wall into the middle of the 2 rooms at the bottom of the stairs without there being any wind or draft or anything that could expel it away. When moving out, I had to go through all my books and decide which ones I wanted to keep and which ones I was going to give away when suddenly we stumble upon an old book that was way too advanced for my reading level as a 6-year-old, and it didn't belong to my mom or brother either. The book was about trolls. It was when I saw this book and saw the creepy drawing of the sinister troll on the cover that I was able to tell my mom that was him. that was the man that sat in my closet. This was roughly 16 to 17 years ago now, and I often wonder if the people who lived in the house after us ever experienced anything in that home. Of course, there were a lot more other things that we experienced at that home that weren't as prominent or terrifying as the ones mentioned above. I know this was long, but if you want any more clarity or anything like that, just let me know. I'll be happy to do my best to elaborate further. It feels good to find a place where I can share this encounter and not get judged or looked at as a loony or a liar. This happened to me when I was working at McDonald's. My boss assigned a schedule amongst our staff. I was unfortunately scheduled for the night shift on Fridays. I didn't usually mind, as we didn't get a whole lot of business around this time of night. My boss was pretty laid back and didn't mind if I went on my phone during business hours, so long as I got all my work done. I remember dozing off repeatedly due to the fact that I wasn't fully acclimated with the night shift hours. Psst. That's when I heard someone making a psst sound, the kind of sound you make when you try to draw someone's attention. I notice a customer trying to make an order outside, so I quickly greet them with my usual, "Hi, welcome to McDonald's, may I take your order?" I then heard a man say, "One Whopper, please? Yes, I would like one Whopper, please." I couldn't tell if he was being a smartass or not, so I ended up saying, "This isn't Burger King, sir. We don't serve that here." I heard him chuckling profusely after I said that. I quickly checked the security camera, only to see a clown. The clown was standing in front of the drive-thru menu without a car. It's not Halloween, why the hell is this guy dressed up like that? I really didn't want to serve this guy, so I decided to use our company policy as a plausible excuse for him to exit the premises. "Hi sir, unfortunately you need to be in a vehicle in order to purchase something here." "If you don't have a Whopper, I'll take a Baconator instead." I now could tell this guy was some random psycho harassing me. I instinctively yelled, "Get the hell out of here before I call the cops!" I cautiously stick my head out the window, only to see the clown no longer there. A couple hours later, near the end of my shift, I notify my boss and fellow employees regarding the situation. They all dismiss my accusations by saying ignorant things like, "Did you get his autograph?" Or, "It was probably some guy that thought it was Halloween." I annoyingly pretend to be amused and head home. The following Friday, it was my time to work the night shift again. I really dreaded working this shift, especially after what transpired that day. I tried to convince myself that it would be highly unlikely that I'd encounter that clown again. As time went on, I remember dozing off as I get startled by another psst sound. I urgently check the security camera, but don't see anyone present. At this point, I genuinely thought I was hearing things due to my subconscious mind thinking about the clown. My paranoia must have been at the peak of its height. That's when I turned my head towards the drive-thru window, only to see the clown staring dead at me. "If you don't make me a Big Mac, I will kill you. Trevor." My heart sank to my stomach. The clown knew my name. I immediately grabbed my cell phone to call the cops, but my hands were trembling so much that I actually wasn't capable of dialing anything. The clown started banging his head on the glass while screaming my name, Trevor, repeatedly. "Trevor, Trevor, Trevor, I am not loving it! Trevor, 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 Trevor!" I see blood dripping down from his head. I started shouting from the top of my lungs, "Leave me alone or I will call the cops!" The clown runs away as another car approaches the drive-thru lot. I stupidly resume work and wait for my boss to come in. Upon his arrival, I explain the entire situation to him. He then dismisses me by saying, "Don't sweat it, kid. It was probably some drunk. You can go home now." As he was talking, I notice a cut on his forehead. I could even see blood start to drip from it. No. It can't be. "Goodbye, Trevor." No! I will never look at life the same way after what I experienced. It still bothers me just thinking about it. It happened a while ago when I was working as a cashier at Starbucks. I worked part-time as there was unfortunately not enough hours available, so moving out of my parents' house wasn't the easiest endeavor to accomplish. My parents always nagged at me for the latter part of the day, which always had me stressed out. They would always send subliminal jabs alluding to me moving out. I'll never forget the time my dad confronted me while I was doing laundry.
Hey, Jason, can you ask for a raise at work?
I can't exactly do that, Dad. I'd probably get fired if I tried that.
Well, can't you work somewhere else then? I'm gonna need your room soon, because I plan to make it Charlie's room.
Charlie was my baby brother. Well, can't Charlie stay in your room a little longer?
I said I'm gonna need your room, damn it! Well, where the hell am I supposed to stay then? Figure it out! You've had plenty of time now!
I've always avoided going home right after work, especially after confrontations like that. I would much rather procrastinate at work after my shift was done just to avoid the inevitable arguments that awaited me. Sounded like a better deal anyway. It'd been a few weeks since the tense clash with my dad. My life had been a little bit more bearable since I started going to this local karaoke bar located down the street from my workplace. I would make it a routine to go there after work just to instill a little more enthusiasm in my already dull life. I was a regular, so I knew all the employees on a first-name basis.
What you drinking tonight, hot stuff?
I'll get the usual, Sally.
Wait a minute. It's you again. Jason, right?
Yep, me again.
Good to see you again, Jason. One order coming right up.
Thanks, Sally. I really enjoyed coming here as it was the perfect place for guests to lounge with just a small admission fee. The bar always held live performances from various bands, so there was usually a decent-sized crowd always in attendance.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's the final performance of the night. Please give it up for the lovely Katie!
Falling for you, I can't keep away. Are you listening? I want you to stay.
Hey, kid. Doesn't she have the prettiest eyes you've ever seen?
Yeah, she's definitely a pretty gal. Katie had a lot of diehard fans that would show up to support her. She was really attractive, which made older men look like young teenage boys fanboying over her. I've had the privilege of chatting with Katie after her shows before, but this time I mustered up the courage to ask her out. Hey Katie, it's me again.
Who are you?
Jason, we met on several occasions after your performances. I'm a big fan of your voice.
Thanks, Jason. I really appreciate...
I think you're the best singer ever, and you're really gorgeous.
Thank you?
I was wondering if we could potentially
Oh,
exchange...
Jason. All you men are alike. I bet you just want to see what I look like without my clothes, right?
No? I mean, yeah. Katie nonchalantly takes my cell phone and begins punching in her contact information. Holy crap, this is actually happening. I must be dreaming.
Here you go, Jason. Hope to chat with you more.
Definitely, baby. Katie. As I was on my way home, I decided to be ballsy and give Katie a goodnight text. I then noticed she had given me a link to her OnlyFans page as opposed to her phone number. What the hell is this? Well, at least I might get to see some nudes. I've personally never used an OnlyFans before, but if there was going to be someone's account I was going to check out, it'd be Katie's. I eventually make it home and open up her page on my computer browser. A subscription of $10 a month? Netflix doesn't even charge that much. I unfortunately didn't have the funds to purchase such things, but my curiosity was what put the nail in the coffin. I took out my credit card and shamefully typed in the details on the site. I was now officially subscribed to Katie's OnlyFans account. I began scrolling around, seeing a lot of mature content throughout her page. I can honestly say it wasn't the most regretful decision I ever made, as I got to see a different side of Katie. Or should I say, a different side of my longtime crush. Oh yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Throughout the night, I continued to browse through more of Katie's content till it was time to head to bed. It'd been a couple of weeks since that whole ordeal occurred. I still worked as a cashier at Starbucks and made it a routine to go to the karaoke bar after work. Everything had pretty much been the same except I hadn't seen or heard about Katie since. I couldn't help but feel like I had some sort of role in Katie's sudden disappearance from the bar, so I decided to snoop around her OnlyFans once again. Later that night, I had Katie's OnlyFans open on my computer. The monthly subscription I had paid for previously was still in effect, so I could still view her content. There were 5 observations I accumulated right off the bat. The first observation was that her status said, active 5 minutes ago. I assumed she had lost interest in the singing gig and was pursuing the OnlyFans endeavors solely now. The second observation was that she began to wear sunglasses in all her recent photos. Interesting. The third observation was that her photos were being taken in an old wooden cellar, not the aesthetic bedroom that she once previously had. The fourth observation was that all her pre-existing content was deleted. Why the hell would she get rid of everything? The only thing left on Katie's page was 3 photos of her posing with sunglasses. The last observation was the one that struck me the most. I could tell her recent pictures were being taken by someone due to the shadow presented in the photos. Call me Sherlock Holmes if you will, but I had my suspicions that something just wasn't right. I decided to direct message Katie saying, "Hey, it's me, Jason, from the karaoke bar. I'm not sure if you remember me, but I wanted to know why don't you perform there anymore?" About 10 minutes go by and I get no reply. She probably gets 1,000 messages. I bet she'll reply to this though. That's when I decided to bribe Katie by sending a convincing message saying, "Hey, if I tipped you $5, could you send me a video of yourself smiling on camera?" About a minute later, I surprisingly got a response from Katie showing a hidden video with an option of unlock for $5. I end up accepting the purchase only to see a video of Katie wearing sunglasses. She just stood in one spot, not saying anything. I then heard a male voice in the background saying,
"Smile for the camera, you vermin!"
Katie then involuntarily puts on this bizarre and unnatural smile, almost like she was a cartoon character from a Disney movie. I felt really disturbed from what I was witnessing. I decided to continue the game of charades and say, "If I give you $5 more, could you send me a video of yourself kissing the friend you're with?" About 5 minutes had passed and I got no reply. I honestly thought Katie was done with my pathetic games until I got another message of a hidden video with a $5 price tag on it. I hesitantly unlocked the video, only to see a disturbing clip of Katie saying,
He's not my friend! Don't ever say he's my friend, because he's not. He's more than that to me. He's my everything. He's my one and only love.
That's my good girl. Oh, yeah. The young boy wanted some kissing action. Let's make his money's worth, shall we?
I felt sick to my stomach. I then realized that the gentleman's appearance stood out to me like I recognized him from somewhere. I couldn't exactly pinpoint where I knew him from, but he definitely looked familiar to me. The man then said,
I bet you love to see Katie's beautiful eyes, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? Oh, I'm gonna make this your best $5 ever spent.
That's when the man removed the sunglasses from Katie's face, revealing her eye sockets with both eyeballs missing. That's when I exited my web browser and immediately turned off my computer. What the hell was that? That was wrong on so many levels. I decided to head to bed and call it a night, hoping to sleep off the nightmare I just witnessed firsthand. It's been a couple months since the incident had occurred. I haven't seen Katie's OnlyFans account since, as I assume she deleted it. Or should I say, that man in the video did. I haven't told anyone about this, and quite frankly, I don't know what to do. I still go to the karaoke bar with an optimistic attitude that one day I'll see Katie again.
Falling for you, I can't keep away. Are you listening? I want you to stay before you go. I want you to know that I'm down, down. Hey kid, doesn't she have the prettiest eyes you've ever seen? For you.
This story happened to me on a Thursday night when I was home alone in my apartment complex. I live with my roommate Josh, who was usually out with his girlfriend, so that gave me the luxury of having the place to myself. I was video chatting with 3 classmates of mine on Facebook Messenger. Their names were Eric, Craig, and Cindy. This was my first interaction with them as our professor selected us to be in a group project together. Throughout the night, we brainstormed ideas while getting more acquainted with one another. This is when the story gets a bit weird. Eric spontaneously asked the group chat,
Hey guys, want to see something cool?
What is it?
Getting an A+ in this project would be cool.
"Sure man, what's up?" Eric sends the group chat a photo. I click the chat icon and see a disturbing image of a woman with her arms and legs missing. What the hell?
Ew! Why are you sending us this?
Dude, where the hell did you get that photo?
I'll tell you, but you guys really need to keep this a secret. Promise me you won't tell anyone.
This isn't marketing related, but okay, I guess.
Sure dude.
Please don't tell me you were the sicko who took that pic.
I didn't. I actually got the photo from the dark web.
Dude, you go on the dark web?
What's the dark web?
Supposedly it's this hidden part of the internet where you can buy illegal stuff. I personally wasn't that educated about the dark web, but I did hear rumors about it growing up. I've always acknowledged the existence of these kinds of things growing up, but I was still unaware as to what potential atrocities lie within the online world. Eric then says,
Yeah, I just recently started getting into it. I found the photo from one of the forums I came across called Homemade Dolls. Here's the full-size picture.
He then sends us the exact same photo, except this time it had a description box next to it with the title, Doll Number 20. Why the hell, of all people, did I have to be in a group project with this weirdo? The details in the description stated inhumane acts that can be performed on the victims before being shipped to their buyers. I felt pretty disgusted reading the dialogue, but I was still somewhat skeptical about the whole thing. It was hard to deny its legitimacy, though. The authenticity of the image looked too real to be a hoax.
To be honest, this looks photoshopped.
I don't know, it looks pretty real to me.
Dude, that's disgusting. Why do you even go on sites like that?
Well, I only go on it occasionally.
Midway through Eric's sentence, a random user joins the video chat. Who's that?
I don't know.
I swear to God, we better not be getting hacked.
Eric, is this one of your stupid friends from the dark web? I'm gonna call the cops if it is.
That's when I decide to move my mouse cursor to exit the video chat. Why the hell isn't this working? Come on, work, goddammit! My cursor was resisting to move no matter how many times I clicked or moved my mouse. That's when the random user's video turned on. It was a guy wearing a pig mask. The mask didn't look like some dollar store knockoff. It looked like the skinned face of an actual pig. He wore it like he was Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Hey, is anybody seeing what I'm seeing? Eric, dude, I really hope this isn't a stupid prank.
It's not, dude. I don't even know who that is.
Why is there a guy wearing a pig mask on my screen?
Guys, what's going on?
I don't know why, but something about that moment, I just knew. I was looking into the eyes of what true evil looks like. That's when my classmate's video chat completely froze. The only screen functioning was the pigman's. It seemed like our computers were being hijacked. I couldn't quite comprehend what was going on till I heard the pigman say,
Can you see me? Say yes if you can hear me.
Say it! I replied with, Yes, what do you want from me? In an uncontrollable stutter.
You know that feeling you get when you're with someone for so long? Every single day just drags and becomes a routine. Well, I just want something new and fresh, you know? Something vibrant that will make me feel alive again. I just need a new doll. What do you say? Does that sound like a brilliant plan to you?
I was completely appalled by what was transpiring. That's when I hear a muffled female's voice in the background. The pigman then swivels the camera towards the direction of the muffled voice, only to reveal a woman with no arms and legs. She had duct tape on her mouth and a chain bound around her neck. The woman was flailing her severed arms wildly in a desperate attempt to escape. A couple seconds later, the pigman approaches her while holding an axe, the kind of axe lumberjacks use to chop down trees. I began to hyperventilate as I knew the inevitable fate this woman was about to endure. He then raises the axe up in the air. I begin screaming from the top of my lungs, "Leave her alone or I'm calling the cops!" As I took my last glance at the woman, I realized that it was the same woman in the photo that Eric sent. That's when the pigman smashes the axe against the woman's skull repeatedly. I practically leap up from my chair and begin to vomit. This sadistic display was unbearable. What the hell is going on? Someone tell me I'm dreaming. There's no way this is real. I look back on the screen, only to see nothing. Like the whole thing was just a bad dream, or a figment of my imagination. What the hell just happened? I know I'm not going crazy. I immediately messaged my classmates in the group chat saying, "Please tell me you guys saw all of that. Did any of you see the pigman? We need to report him."
Yeah, I briefly saw him, but then my video chat ended.
Same here. That was weird as hell.
Must have been a hacker. Thank God my screen went back to normal. Did you see anything, Terrance? I respond as nonchalantly as I can, saying, "Yeah, basically what you guys saw. I think it's best that we just put this behind us and move on from here, you know?" I didn't know if that was the right decision. I didn't want to further escalate the situation. Acknowledging the pigman's existence was one thing, but going into further detail about afterwards just felt unnecessary. This is the part where I wish the story ends. It's been a year since the incident. I ended up dropping out and taking the semester off due to the mental trauma I endured. I now work at a local retail store. I was coming home from work one day and I saw an envelope sitting in my mail slot. I open it and discover the most horrifying thing that sends shivers down my spine. It was a picture of my classmate, Cindy. Except she had no legs and no arms. The picture was titled Doll Number 21. So, I don't know where to start with this. I've never shared my story or stories with anyone other than my close friend. I don't want anyone thinking I'm crazy. Anyways, it was around Christmas time when this all happened. My friend and I were really into Ouija boards, but never had the balls to buy one. Even if I did get one, my parents would pretty much disown me. My family isn't super religious, but they definitely believed in the Ouija board enough to know how powerful it could be. So, as I was saying, this happened around Christmas time. My friend came over to celebrate with my family since he wasn't too close with his. He took me aside and we exchanged gifts. He opened his first. I had gotten him a couple of movies he'd been wanting. When it was my turn to open my gift, he stopped me before I could even read the label. He said, "Make sure your mom doesn't see it." Immediately I knew what he had gotten me. I opened it and there it was. My very own Ouija board. We had a Christmas cake at my place, then went to a bar nearby. after we were done. My friend offered to give me a ride. He dropped me off. I went inside, changed into some comfortable clothes, and set up the Ouija board. I've watched YouTube and read enough of other people's experiences that I knew I didn't want to play it by myself. I called one of my other friends who was looking for something to do. After what seemed like forever, she finally showed up. Let me tell you, she was not happy when she saw the Ouija board. I didn't tell her what we were going to do because I knew she wouldn't show up if I did. Eventually, I conned her into playing it with me. She only agreed to play if I asked all the questions. We sat across from each other with the board in between us. Our Christmas tree was on my left-hand side, and towards the middle of the tree, there was an ornament that looked like a little girl. She's dressed in a green cloak-type thing with a Sherpa-lined hood. My sister has a similar one, but hers is pink. Anyways, I started off with the usual opening of the circle. One of the first questions I asked was, "Is there anyone here with us?" Nothing. I then felt like something was in the room with us. I took a breath and said, "If there's anything here, move an ornament on the tree." Nothing. I said once more, "If there's anything here, move an ornament on the tree." After that, I closed my eyes for a split second when I felt the slightest breeze. Out of the corner of my eye, I see my ornament spinning counterclockwise. My friend is quick to take her hands off the planchette, and I yell at her to put her fingers back because you're never supposed to break the circle. She said she's done playing the stupid game, so I agreed to say goodbye. She leaves, I lock the door behind her, and I pack up the board. As soon as I close the box, I get a phone call. My mom is outside waiting for me to help her bring things upstairs. I rush to find a hiding spot for the board because no one knew that I had it. I quickly throw it under my bed so I could deal with it later. My mom then informs me she's going to my aunt's to spend the night, so I'll be home alone. I was a little scared about what just happened, so I called my friend asking if I could spend the night at her house. Thank goodness she didn't leave yet. I packed a few things, got my coat, and left with her. What I didn't know was, later that night, my family came back home because my sister wasn't feeling too well. She had slept in my bed since I wasn't home. The next morning when I returned, my mom looked exhausted. I asked her if she was all right. She replied, "Your sister came to my room terrified and screaming. She didn't tell you?" I said, "No, what happened?" My mom went on to say, "Your sister had a horrible nightmare. She said someone or something killed your dad. She wouldn't stop shaking and refused to sleep in your room." My eyes opened so wide. Something told me to go look under my bed, and sure enough, I was right. The lid to the box from the Ouija board was slightly open. No one knew I had it. I never asked my sister about her nightmare. After that, weird things started happening around the house. All I know is, I will never play with another Ouija board again.